कारणमा कृपया पाहि शुभ कारणमा कृपया पाहि शुभ वारणवदनजनार्ति हरण भवतारण विघ्न निवारण वरगुण साप सनि पम गम रे वारणवदनजनार्ति हरण भवतारण विघ्न निवारण वरगुण साप सनि पम गम रे गम पनि साप सनि पम गम रे गम पम रे सरि सम ग मनि प सानि रे सारि सनि सनि पनि पम रे सरि रि ग म प प द नि नि स सरि ग म रे सनि पम रे सरि मरि सरि स म पनि सनि पनि प नि सरि मरि सरि श्री महा गणपते
Thank you, Ramya. That was indeed melodious. Now I request Srimati Malvika Avinash, Vice President BJP Karnataka, to deliver the welcome address.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಕ್ಷ ಮಾಧ್ಯಮ ಪ್ರಕೋಷ್ಠ ಮತ್ತು ಆರ್ಥಿಕ ಪ್ರಕೋಷ್ಠದ ವತಿಯಿಂದ ಇವತ್ತು ಈ ಸಭಾಂಗಣದಲ್ಲಿ ನೆರೆದಿರುವಂತಹ ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಆತ್ಮೀಯವಾದ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನು ನಾನು ಕೋರಲು ಬಯಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಐ ಡೀಮ್ ಇಟ್ ಮೈ pleasure and privilege to welcome all of you present here today to an interactive session with Dr. S. Jaishankar, who's graced Bengaluru this evening. At the outset, I'd like to welcome Dr. S. Jaishankar, who's, as you all are aware, has been the Minister of External Affairs, Union of India. I also welcome Dr. C.N. Ashwath Narayan, who's been a former Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka and is currently serving as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Malleshwaram. I also welcome Ashwath Narayan, who is the chief spokesperson of Bharatiya Janata Party Karnataka. In this audience today, present are experts from various walks of life. I think it's a mix of CFOs, CEOs, chartered accountants, doctors, engineers, architects, and scientists, many more such eminent people from all walks of life who are citizens of Bengaluru. So I extend a very warm welcome to all of you, to the friends from the media as well. And Prashant, I think you can take over and start the session. I welcome you all once again. Elrigu swagata.
All of us know about Dr. Jaishankar being a former diplomat and now a successful Union Minister. He is also an accomplished author. I now invite Dr. S. Jaishankar to hand over a copy of the Kannada version of his 2020 bestseller, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World. This book, I request him to hand over the copy to Dr. C.N. Ashwath Narayan and also to the other dignitaries on the stage. Dr. S. Jaishankar is a graduate of St. Stephen's College at the University of Delhi. He has a Master's in Political Science and an MPhil and PhD in International Relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He was a former diplomat, he was a foreign secretary, and also ambassador to leading countries such as United States, China, Singapore, and Czech Republic. He has also served in other diplomatic assignments in embassies in Moscow, Colombo, Budapest, and Tokyo. He is also the recipient of the Padma Shri Award in 2019. And now, from 2019 onwards, he is a member of the upper house at Rajya Sabha, and now he is presently serving as India's External Affairs Minister since May 2019. I once again welcome Dr. S. Jaishankar to this event. I now invite Dr. S. Jaishankar to render his introductory remarks.
Dr. Ashwath Narayanji, Srimati Malvika Avinashji, Sri Ashwath Narayanji, dear friends. It's always good to be back in Bengaluru, and I'm delighted that I can do this while also propagating the good cause and getting people to do the right thing in the coming weeks to come. I was introduced as the Minister of External Affairs. You all know me in that capacity. But to the airlines and the airports of the world, I'm known as one of the most frequent travelers. Now, I say this to you with a reason. Because, you know, right now, there are big debates going on in our country. How much we have changed, what is the progress. There are people who have views about it, people who have positive views about it, there's few people who have different views about it. So I have the great advantage of actually listening to the rest of the world discuss India. So I want to share with you today. I mean, you know my views about India. You know, there's nothing I'm going to say there which would be different. What is the world thinking when they think about India? I would say probably the dominant thought today would be of India as the fastest growing large economy of the world. Now, anytime you are a fast-growing large economy, you know, you're going to get people's attention. No question about that. But particularly in the aftermath of COVID, when a lot of countries are struggling to rebuild their economies, in many cases rebuild their social fabric, when many of them handled the COVID in a way in which they busted the bank. They are now looking at India, a country which has come out of COVID, which is actually back to a 7% growth rate, which is posting very strong export performance, which has maintained its fiscal discipline through this period, which has actually managed its inflation during this period, and where clearly today there is a business buzz. I think that is something which is today a kind of I would say a gut sense of India. But it's not just what we are doing. It's actually how do we fit into the plans and the worries and the priorities of the world. And today, the big debate in the world is actually how to de-risk the global economy. Because after the COVID, there was a very strong sense in the world that it's too dependent on a single geography. That if something happens in that geography, conscious or not, the entire world then gets impacted. So if you actually, I mean, there's a lot of geopolitics, you know, that's a different issue, I'll talk about it. But if you actually ask me today, sum up the key trends in the international economy which are relevant, particularly relevant to India, I would say one is the effort to create more reliable and resilient supply chains. And therefore, India as a country which can be fitted into the global supply chains today has a relevance. I mean, we have our own interest, but I'm now giving you the world's way of looking at us. The second is actually on the digital side. That when it comes to the digital world today, there is a very acute awareness of the importance of trust and transparency. Because every little thing that you confide into your phone, and each of us talks more to our phone than we talk to our spouse or children today, that is actually being processed, harnessed, and deployed by somebody. Now, why is that relevant to us? Because again, today the world's sense of India is in this big debate in the world, where is there trust and transparency in the digital world and where is there not? We fall on the right side of that debate. So the first point I would make for your consideration is that there is both respect for India and India's performance in the world. But there is also a great sense of anticipation about where India can fit in. There is one more factor which I will talk about a little later. The second issue is actually, what is happening in the politics of India. That from a time when generally democracies were seen as dysfunctional and inefficient, we have actually managed to change the image of democracy. That by this, by handling challenges like COVID, by all the transformations that we have seen in the last decade, we have today created a sense in the world today that it is possible to be a democracy and it is possible to simultaneously deliver and develop in a strong way. I can tell you, there is enormous interest and, the scale of what is happening in our politics when people ask me, so how many voters are there? I mean, we are talking where single constituencies in India there are many countries of that size or less, of single constituencies. When you come to the states, there are states of India which would probably be, I think, in the top 10 countries of the world in terms of population. So the idea that so many people are actually able to organize themselves into a genuinely participative and consensual exercise. And I'm compelled to say this, that at a time when many established democracies are struggling with process, are struggling with outcomes, are actually even struggling with principles, we today are actually a system which, frankly, in many ways is an exemplar. We have never had hanging chads in India. We've never had to go to a Supreme Court to actually decide who has won the election or not. So when we speak today about democracy, I think it's very important for us to realize the value of what we are doing. Because believe me, a large part of the world is actually looking at us and saying, okay, these guys have close to 1 billion voters. People are still astonished. There are many democracies where it is compulsory to vote. They are astonished that we can get a 70% rate of voting on a voluntary basis. So, one part of it is the democracy that delivers. That's the democracy bit I talked. Then there's the delivery part. I tell people that often when I go out, I get my foreign policy business done maybe in about 25-30% of the time. The rest of my time, I actually spend responding to curiosity about India. You know, people pick up something they have read. And probably the most recurring theme now is, because remember, this is like a peer group, okay? This will be like you have a large chamber of commerce. Imagine ministers of the world or the prime ministers or the presidents of the world discussing each other's business and doing a kind of a peer review and a rating out there. They actually are very curious. How does this, delivery of public services, of public goods on the scale in which it is happening, actually happen? Because when I actually share numbers with them, there are a lot of countries which give food support of some kind. You can say rations of some kind. Now when you tell them that we have mastered a system. There are countries which are struggling how to deliver food stamps. Okay, I don't want to take names out here. Okay, we are today delivering rations to 815 million people month on month. And one of the commitments we have just made is we'll keep it going for the next 5 years. And it's not a one-off. We are actually building more and more layers into this system. That if we are today, for example, to look at something like, access to health, that if we are able to handle, let us say, 300 million people in Ayushman Bharat, if we are able to do on a gas cylinder 100 million people, on housing, in the last 10 years, most people don't realize in this country, we built 40 million houses under the Awas Yojana, which at 4.8 as an average family means that 195 million people actually have houses today, which they did not have 10 years ago. And compare, I ask people sometimes, imagine if I had stood here talking to all of you and said, you know what, folks, you've just voted in a government. This obviously has to be in June of 2019. You've just voted in a government which is going to be able to feed all of Europe and America without leakage on a sustainable basis, which would be able to house all of Japan and Germany in the course of 2 terms, which will be able to change the cooking habits of all of Germany if every inhabitant of that country was, which will do enough mudra loans that entire Europe with, bits of North America would be covered out there. Just the scale of it is something which you would be staggered by. And yet, we've actually won the delivery and the delivery of services, Every service that we avail of today in the country is actually something which has become easier. In fact, it's become so easy that you all take it for granted. You don't think how, I wanted to ask you this question. I deliver passports for a living, okay? That's one of my, I won't say night jobs, evening jobs. But ask yourself, how difficult it was to get a passport 10 years earlier. Or forget passports. I don't do driving licenses, but just think how easy it is today to get driving license. How easy is it to get your own records, actually of various kinds retrieved. Could be a birth certificate, could be a marriage certificate, could be a house related papers. So when the world looks at what we have done as in terms of governance, in terms of delivery, I think this is also a subject of increasing fascination for them. Now, I spoke about, the interest that the world has in us economically. I think the key of it, I mean, there is obviously, I mean, we are a growing market, there's growing consumption, there's interest in accessing our market. But I think today the biggest driver of the global interest in India is actually our technology capabilities. And the reason for that is one, the nature of technology, the fact that we are heading into an era where you need a particular kind of workforce who will embed knowledge in a particular kind of way, which will then get into a set of products which we will then use, which will be intelligent products, which hopefully we will use equally intelligently. But coupled with that is the demographics. You know, again, in the last 2-3 years, I have seen countries who were actually very sensitive. I mean, you didn't even talk to them about mobility of people. Today, we are actually being pursued by countries to look at mobility agreements. I mean, just in the last 2 years, we've done mobility agreements in Europe with Austria, Italy, Germany, Portugal, France. We've done one with Australia. Even Japan, which is very immigration sensitive, has opened up 18 professions where they're keen to get people. But, you know, this we are talking about people going out. There's an equal interest today about wanting to come in. So, we have, on the one hand, developed the idea of make in India and make for the world. Today, I think we are moving to an era where we have to push work in India and work for the world. This actually is what awaits us. And it particularly awaits us in the context of Sunrise Industries. That there are a whole lot of businesses. I mean, you look today at the semiconductor business. 15 years ago, I think many of you know better than me, Intel came here with some propositions, came to India with some propositions, and I understand we took our time about it and they got tired and they went away somewhere else. Today, we are getting a second bite of the apple in changed circumstances. But the fact today that we are once again thinking we have actually well on our way of establishing a fab, a modern fab in this country, which is the first of what I believe are a few more to come. The idea that the rest of the semiconductor chain is actually, I mean, when you have the Microns and the Applied Materials and the Lam Researchers of the world start to look at India, they are coming here both for what they're going to be doing globally, but also for what they're going to get in India, out of India, for India. So when you read about Elon Musk, I mean, it also says something about us. You know, somewhere today, I mean, I know Elon Musk likes India. I have heard it from him. Prime Minister just said some nice things in an interview today. But obviously in his scheme of things, somewhere, you know, there is a place for India if he's going to make a big move. So the issue today for us is, as an economic entity, as a source of talent, as a increasingly, as a, I would say, example of digital delivery and better governance, as a democracy that delivers. I think we are today more and more relevant to the world. Now there are other connotations, you know, so sort of cascading implications of this as well. One of the big geopolitical propositions today, geoeconomic propositions today in the world, is something called the IMEC corridor, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. If you look at it, it's 500 years old. when Vasco da Gama came to Kerala, he was doing the inverse of an IMEC. He was coming from Europe to India. So we have to ask ourselves today, isn't it interesting today that today the Western world, the European world, and the Arabian Peninsula in between is so interested in reviving this connect, historical connect. Now I understand one part of it is, again, I go back to de-risking. People don't want Suez Canal to become a choke point. But beyond that, the very fact that you have in this corridor India at one end and Europe at the other, going through the Arabian Sea, through the Arabian Peninsula, through the Mediterranean into Europe, it also should say something about us. That in their calculations, because remember, in the midst of the entire G20, this was one of the big achievements. So it mattered enough for everybody to take time out and figure out how to do this. And even though there is a lot of turbulence in the Middle East after October 7th, the one thing on which all the IMEC partners are agreed on is, look, keep this steady, we'll get down to this. Now that's west of us. There's actually another connectivity initiative which unfortunately again has got stuck because of a different conflict, the civil conflict in Myanmar, which is what is called the Trilateral Highway. Initially it was to take us from India, Myanmar, Thailand. Today Vietnam and the countries there, Laos, Cambodia, are plugging into it. Now again, if you have to think even this decade, okay, I can think of this decade in different ways. I think we will be looking at a much more robust, more pervasive deployment of AI. We will be looking at an India which will inevitably be the third largest economy in the world. But we will also be one of the countries through whom actually a connectivity passage all the way from the Pacific, from the Vietnam coast, will pass through India and keep going and go all the way to the Atlantic coast. So I'm using this really as, in a way, provocative thoughts to get you thinking about us. That, because it is in our, it's human nature. We are all self-absorbed in our day-to-day work, in our activities, even in our ambitions. But this is today a time to think big. It is a time to plan big. We believe today that the last 10 years have set a foundation. That foundation actually allows us the takeoff point to do very much more. And I will end with one last remark. Everything I've said points to the fact that we loom much larger in the world's consciousness. So the world is going to be asking itself more and more, what kind of power, what kind of polity will India be? This question mattered less, maybe didn't matter at all 10 years ago. If you are the 11th largest economy in the world and also part of the fragile five, I don't think people were too bothered by what you were about. But when you head to become the third largest economy, when you become critical to global supply chains, when you become very deeply embedded in global technology initiatives and projects, then actually our DNA, our habits, our thinking begins to matter more and more. So I think here too, it's important for us to strengthen our self-awareness, because at the end of the day, if we don't know where we came from, how will we know where we are going? I think it's important for us to have a sharp sense of our history, of our culture, of our beliefs. I don't think we need to be, we've spent decades really trying to modernize in terms of definitions which others put for us. It is today time for us to actually think through the solutions ourselves. In a very practical way. I'm talking big history there, but I can come down to something very prosaic. One of the changes in the last 10 years actually has been the ability to think for ourselves. When we were dealing with COVID, we got a lot of free advice on where to spend our money. I'm so glad we didn't listen to any of it. We've had, geopolitical conflicts. Here we didn't just get advice, we even got a bit of a push about what we should be doing. And we figured it out for ourselves based on our interests. Those are tactical issues, you can say. But I would say, in a bigger sense, in a historic sense, in a civilizational sense today, what we are, where we came from, what matters to us, how do we think, what is our belief, how do we present it to the world. Any society which is thousands of years old will have a long view, not just behind, will have a long view in front as well. So we need today to be confident about that. I think the time to seek validation elsewhere. This is not a xenophobic statement. On the contrary, I believe that the more we grow, and in a sense, I would say, frankly, the more nationalist we are, we should be doing more with the world, not less with the world. But I do think that that era of seeking validation elsewhere should be behind us. We need to be confident about where we are going. And today I had the pleasure of presenting the Kannada copy of my first book. I'm kind of plugging a second book as well, but I have brought out a second book earlier this year, and the core point of that is this, that era of, looking elsewhere, benchmarking yourselves, of being defined by others, that era now should be put behind us. And we don't need to be defensive about our faith. We don't need to be apologetic about our beliefs and practices. And it is, to me, this term, when we say Bharat, for me, I can visibly see there is a reason why my first book 5 years ago was The India Way, but my second book is Why Bharat Matters. So on that note, once again, I thank you all for taking the time out today for joining this dialogue. And since it is a dialogue, I expect that there will be issues you will raise, and I'd be very, very happy to engage you. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure the delegates are spellbound by your deliberations. About his book, the second book is also come, but about the first book, the Kannada version is available outside. I request people who are well versed in Kannada language to pick up the book and read it so that the Kannada version also becomes the bestseller in 2024. Mr. Jaishankar has been kind enough to agree to spend his time to interact with this august audience. The floor would be now open for questions, and we would start. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, sir. Mr. Jaishankar, thank you for coming to Bangalore. You are a Bangalorean by birth and by practice, so we are very grateful. All of us are your supporters. I'll ask you three small questions. One, what gave you the boldness to stand up for India when the US was trying to bully India against Russia in the Ukraine conflict? you made a very bold statement which no foreign minister of this country has ever made. And you said, Europe should realize the problems of Europe are not the world's problem, because Europe does not believe the world's problems are Europe's problem. My second question is, we are in the midst of the digital revolution where India is a major digital power, and you have come to the heart of the power. You're sitting next to the minister who made it happen here. And what is your digital diplomacy for the rest of the world? Because we can take a dominant role, and in that, will you sponsor a universal declaration of digital rights in the United States to protect the people of the world from the rise of digital monopolies? For monopolizing data, you spoke about it, just like the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which transformed humanity. My last question is, for the last many years, we've seen George Soros spend a lot of money to NGOs to disparage many countries to bring forward his ideology. Can we have a set of NGOs or think tanks who counter them with data, point out how they are not taking correct data, ask them for transparency, and ask them to tell us who are those people who are giving opinions, because they're all part of the same echo chamber funded by George Soros? Is an irritation for us every now and then to look at this, and that's being used by some malcontents in this country to create a negative narrative about India, and of course the leftist global media. Thank you, sir.
Okay. 3 more questions. 2 more. We'll come. We'll take one from here, one from this row. It's an interaction. We have time.
Hello, sir. This is Shikara from WMG Group. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to ask my question. My question to you is, sir, we all are looking long-term, very, very long-term, 1947, Viksit Bharat. We want to understand from you, we want to understand from you what is your plan, or what is that we can look forward as a part of external affairs, that we all can look forward and take advantage or have it in our plans.
One more.
Good evening, thank you. Raghav, I'm a chartered accountant. Wanted to ask you about the big 2 counterparts on diplomacy, China and the US. Things are tricky with China all the time with border, trade issues. What could be a good equilibrium with them, say, immediate term, and what could be our long-term goal as a country vis-a-vis China? Similarly, US always happy to do trade with us, always happy to do investments, but anything greater than that, counterterrorism, Pakistan, they are quite trenchant in their what they can do, or even on defense terms. What do you think will take to make it a more mature, stable sort of interaction?
I think for the first question, let me start with what Mohandas Pai asked. So what kind of shaped, what drove and B would be 1.4 billion. That, I mean, my gut sense, to be very honest, is look, I am out here, I represent 1.4 billion people. I'm Modi's foreign minister, and if you think you're going to push me around, you got another guest coming. So it was instinctive. The second issue, digital, what can we do? Look, we can do today a lot of things. I mean, we are today propagating, trying to get UPI connected with many more economies. We are trying to see if, some of our digital experiences are replicable elsewhere. There are countries who are interested. Some of it can be a commercial proposition, some of it can be supported. Not just countries, there are in some cases important foundations who are interested. So I think there's a lot of play here, but at the, I'm a little cautious about how far I take the argumentation on this. Because very honestly, I would rather be known as a business-minded Indian than an argumentative Indian. So I would like to see how our country can use it to, actually get ourselves much more into the global digital business, because I'll come back to the US-China. I think it's kind of connected out there. I think there are partnerships to be forged there for mutual advantage, but again, it's important we know what our interests are, and while find the right balance between our own interests and red lines and what the opportunities are. On the issue of these reports which come out, and you mentioned Soros Foundation, Soros himself in that context. Look, it's very interesting. In many cases, when you have these ratings which are given, if somebody actually bothers to go through it, you will find the names of people who've been consulted. And you'd be amazed how many reports are produced in the world about India and how the same set of people are consulted. Completely coincidence, They just happen to express their opinion again and again, consistently to different people. So this is something, it's actually, we've been pointing out today that, because it's not, this is not just a polemical point, because sometimes they actually do real harm to the country. That in many cases, we find, even ratings of India take into account, a lot of what is said by non-financial, non-economic players about India, So risk assessments about India, sense of stability in India, all these are actually influenced. So we have already started challenging a lot of this. But I think I agree with you. I think it has to be done on a more systematic basis. In fact, there are some people, and I really would say more power to their elbow, who want to bring out some ratings of other countries. I think it's a worthwhile exercise. It may seem a little bit flaky at the start, but I think if they build it into a credible industry over a period of time, there is some good to it. On the second issue, Viksit Bharat, in a sense, what can foreign policy do? What has basically happened under Prime Minister Modi is he has purposed foreign policy much more effectively to advance national development and national security. It wasn't like, in a broad sense that feeling existed, but he has been much more active in, building brand, in looking at best practices, in seeking capital, technology, in convincing others of the value of partnering with us. And quite frankly, in my living memory, and my memory goes back a pretty long time, I can't think of any Prime Minister who's done this really so diligently and so persistently. And I think some of that effort, the results of that today, we are actually seeing. But when I look ahead, in the next 20 years, what are 2-3 big things foreign policy should be doing? Clearly, we have to build this India brand, Bharat brand, actually. The Bharat brand has to be built over the next 20-25 years. The second is we have to think of the world really as a much more mobile and integrated workplace. That the idea that, today of people, all professions actually are going to become much more global, because as I said, there's this huge demographic challenge which already the world, parts of the world are experiencing. This is going to aggravate very sharply, even by the end of this decade. And the result of that, I think we have to envisage the world in terms of mobility, in terms of employment, in terms of enterprises and their location in a very different way. The third, and therefore it's in a sense it's very people-centric. The third, of course, is that we have to look at what technology means, because, you know, even I'm giving you a negative sense, there's an opportunity side to it as well. Typically, we think threat means, you know, national security means border. National security means terrorism. You know, national security means something tangible which somebody from outside comes and does in your home. Today, that's anachronistic. That if you look, you know, as I said, I mean, we are walking emitters of data. That itself is an issue of national security. So how do we reimagine actually both what security is and what opportunities are? And there will be new domains, you know. I mean, there's a big debate already. You know, should there be guardrails for AI? You know, what about space? There are very radically different views about to militarize space. What does it mean? I would say deep sea. You know, the economic implications of deep sea. And every time there's a change, there will be friction and there'll be contention. So we are actually going to be looking actually at a big shift in foreign policy as well, which will keep track as we traverse towards Viksit Bharat. The last issue, the China, look, the China equilibrium, I think, is one of the really big challenges that we face, because, you know, because they undertook reform earlier than us, they have progressed faster. You know, this is the reality, and I think the people responsible for our economic decision making between 1947 and 1992 are fairly and squarely responsible for it. I don't think we should shrink from that. The worst thing we did to ourselves was license Raj. You know, I mean, there could not be a bigger self-inflicted wound on this country. But now, you know, and after we started to change, it's going to take us time, but people can see today that, you know, it's not just what is organically happening within the country. As someone in foreign policy, I would tell you, a large part of it is also having the relationships outside. Because China didn't grow by itself. This China that we see today, this happened because it had partnerships with the US, with Japan, and with Europe. They helped this China to happen. I think there's a lesson in it for us. So there is a foreign policy aspect today of how to grow faster. And that is something definitely, if you see where the Modi government is investing its foreign policy energies, I think you can see. And it is only by, I would say, one part of it is economic, quantitative, okay, the size of the GDP. But the other part which doesn't get talked about is actually the deep technology strengths. That if you look even at our last 20 years, our technology growth has not paralleled our economic growth. And that is because our manufacturing growth has fallen behind. There are still people, you know, who believe that this country cannot manufacture. There are people who advise publicly saying don't manufacture. Some people have even written a book on it. Okay? And there are some leaders who go around saying, you know, make in India is nonsense. If you don't make in India, you won't manufacture. If you don't manufacture, how will you get technology? I mean, who in the world can generate technology without doing manufacturing? So I think we have today really a big issue there. We can't go the old way. You know, we'll have to find leapfrogging techniques, and we'll have to find new industries to latch on to, which will give us an opportunity. And that is why I come back to global supply chains and trusted digital players. These two will actually allow us to plug into what is happening in the world, and the answers there lead you to the US. So I think in a way, that is something you need to reflect.
The next three questions. Sir.
Can I?
We'll come back. We'll come. Yes.
I'm Dr. Srikanth. I have 2 or 3 small questions. The first one is, I'm a doctor, so my first question is obviously going to be regarding the COVID diplomacy. I noticed that, the nations that we have helped, they are a disparate group of nations. They are not, we've not obviously focused on the neighbors alone, because some neighbors we have not helped with vaccines. So we didn't need to, rather. And what was the, thought process behind looking at which nation we help, and was it altruism? Was it, self-interest? So that is my first question. My second question is something which you stated in the beginning. That is, a sea change has happened in the way India is looked at when we go out. So those of us who have traveled abroad earlier, and when we go out now, we do notice that we are being seen differently, and a good bit of it is because of the way that embassies also help us out. I want to know, it is the same staff, it is the same infrastructure in the embassies. How was this change brought about? I ask this question because, a lot of us have this attitude that it's not possible to change.
And we'll have an opportunity for the backbenchers as well.
One last question. I have
One from each person would do. So, one from the last benchers, I think we need to give equal opportunity for the last benchers. One question now.
My name is S.S. Murthy. I am a retired professor of IIT Delhi. I am concerned about the National Education Policy 2020, whose important mandate is internationalization of education. And as of now, lot of our youngsters are just going abroad into all type of countries in the world, including Ukraine, Kazakhstan, China, Russia, any country, and which often creates problem for youth crisis. And but if you want to become a Vishwaguru, we must reverse this trend. We should be very proud that we are having lakhs of people going abroad every year. So we must set up good foreign university in India. We should upgrade our own institution to world ranking, and to make sure that there are more foreign students in China than in India today. Therefore, I think this trend has to be reversed, and we need not be proud of saying we are sending lakhs of students abroad. Okay, this is my sentence.
Yes, sir. The third question we'll take from probably this corner. Okay. Gender balancing. So
you can hear me, sir. Sir, my name is Ajay, and I want to ask.
Sorry, I'm Disha, a PhD student in IISc and a part of BJP State Economic Cell. I have a question regarding the recent reporting of deaths in US of Indians and Indian Americans. Do you think there is a racial angle to it? And is MEA following these questions, these cases?
Lady.
Sorry, I was trying to get the next question, but please go ahead.
Okay. So the media has been reporting deaths of Indians and Indian Americans in USA. Do you think there is a racial angle towards it, and is MEA following upon it? Thank you.
Yeah. We request delegates to have one question and keep it short.
Sir, I have.
I'm Dr. Sudarshan, professor from Jain University. A couple of days I read that Maldives wanted to have a road show in India in order to woo the Indian tourists. Should we allow this? What should be our policy better?
So,
No, I think one.
Dr. Jaishankar, my name is Ajay. I have a different question. It is possibly the defense diplomacy.
Wait. This lady, please.
Namaskaram, my name is Dr. Smita Ranganathan. I try to teach international business and strategy across 4 continents, sir. Just for the record, my students tend to watch your videos more than they watch Elon Musk, despite 10% of them riding or driving their own Tesla. So I have just one question. Although I try to preach these subjects, I try very hard to build global citizens who are India positive, but that's where I think I fail. My question is, this is specifically invoking the academician and the researcher in you, sir. Do you think it's time for us to not look at international relations as a separate vertical, but to create a course which is very well researched within India, where we can have more India positive citizens right from school all the way to universities?
Okay, let me deal with this one. First question, was there a thought process in COVID diplomacy? It's a mix of a yes and a no. It was yes in the sense, somewhere logical, like a Maldives, a Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. These are our immediate neighbors. Made absolute sense to help them out. In some cases, we had obligations to an international initiative called COVAX. In fact, that was the initiative which supported us in expanding the AstraZeneca production here. So some of it came out of that. But in many cases, there were countries, I'm talking particularly in Africa, Latin America, Pacific, and their requirements were not big, but they had no hope of getting it if they stood in the queue. Okay, so there it was genuinely a sense of solidarity. We felt, look, these are people, and it was at that time. I must tell you, it actually made you angry to see countries, developed countries, who had stockpiled vaccines to multiple excess of their population. So, you had countries which had 5x vaccines, 6x vaccines of their population. And right next to them, or close to them, you had, some small country or a less developed country who was zero. So, I think, look, in this country, there is both a sense of solidarity which comes from, the colonial, post-colonial experience. But I think deep within us, that's why I come to that, who are we issue. I think there is a sense of fair play in this country. There is a sense that, look, ethics do matter. We are not that transactional a people. I mean, we have a heart. I mean, there is a heart in our foreign policy, I must tell you. So, on the embassies, look, I take your point. It's the same embassy. I mean, I've seen it. I've spent my entire working life out there. In a way, I would say, why embassies? It would even apply, it's the same government, but it's, I mean, I guess when there's a management change of a radical nature, every enterprise, shapes up. So we went through a takeover in 2014, we got a better management and a stronger leader. And frankly, look, there is much greater motivation. I mean, I must actually tell you that when I see, the gentleman the professor from IIT asked about, the situations we get into. Yes, we get into those situations. And sometimes in those situations, I actually have to ask my officers to take, risks, risks sometimes to their lives. That I sent in people to Kabul airport after Kabul was taken over by the Taliban. Okay? I sent in people to the front line of Ukraine, Russia, to get students out. Okay. But here is the difference. Today, because you can say the enterprise, the national enterprise is charged up. I actually get, people are motivated, they're willing, they volunteer. There is a sense that, look, I also want, if this is something which PM has so strongly felt, I also want to be part of it. It's had a huge, impact today on the government. And as someone who's been part of it for 10 years, I tell my older colleagues, if most of you come back today to the government, you guys won't last a week. I mean, that's how radically it's actually changed. On the NEP, Professor, we don't take pride in the fact that so many students go out. I agree with you. I don't think it's a matter of pride. In fact, not only is it not a matter of pride, I also look, there are economic issues which are involved with it. I think the thinking is very similar. The NEP thinking is very similar to what you have articulated. We would like to see more universities come in. I think on a kind of a pilot basis, a few have come in. I don't directly deal with it, but my sense from a colleague who does is that we will see, much more sort of collaborative or even independent methods by which you have a group. We need to grow our education sector. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, we can't tell young people don't go outside but still not give them opportunities in India. One way of dealing with it is to expand the opportunities in India, and that is something which is very much the objective of NEP. The other is not just quantitatively expand it, but also keep raising quality, and to do that, we need that connection with the global academic world so that we have, we keep to what are global standards and sort of contemporary trends. On the other question, next question was, I skipped one. I can't read my own notes here. I know there's a Maldives question. In between that,
Asking Indian to the Maldives wants to have an.
No, Maldives I remember.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
yes,
Indian students, yes. Look, it's very unfortunate. We've had actually a number of tragedies with Indian students out there. I can tell you every one of those cases is actually looked at very, very carefully because, it is our citizen, and in a sense the first responder is often the embassy or the consulate out there. It's then often, it's one of our sad duties to then deal with the families. I think we would, there's no pattern to it, Each one is an incident in itself. They have very varying costs. Some of them even happen to be natural. Some of them happen to be accidents. Some of them are, of course, we've had murders, we've had attacks, there's been a bit of that. So I take each one seriously, but I wouldn't make a kind of a connection and draw a larger conclusion out of that. On the Maldives issue, look, at the end of the day, neither they nor us can wish each other away. I mean, we are neighbors, okay? What happens sometimes in politics is neighbors become an issue in politics. We have to have the patience and maturity to see that through. I'm convinced at the end of the day, the more positive, collaborative instincts will assert itself, because finally, as we said, neither of us are in a position to find ourselves a new location. I mean, they are going to be our neighbors forever. So we have to, my feeling is handle this with a certain degree of deftness, not respond necessarily to every provocation with somebody out there. And there are people who seem to have made it like a habit to provoke. I think that's also something we need to keep in mind. So let us see, where this trend takes us. And finally, should we actually have a discipline other than IR? Look, even IR is today changing. It's less kind of applied political science, and it is moving into many more dimensions. I believe today that if we really want to build globally a kind of a population of well-wishers of India, the best way of actually doing that is one, to give them stakes in India, and number two, give them good experiences in India. And good experience doesn't mean they have to come here and, that's also welcome. But the more business we do with the world, the more tourism there is with the world, the more connectivity we build, somewhere, and I'm very convinced we can do it, because when I look, a lot of you have experience of the US, okay? I read in a book a very interesting number. The number was, when Nehru first went to America, there were 3,000 Indian Americans. When Indira Gandhi first went to America, it was 30,000 Indian Americans. When Rajiv Gandhi went, it was 300,000 Indian Americans. When Narendra Modi went as Prime Minister, it was 3.3 million Indian Americans. Now, I'm giving you this to show how these people in America actually have changed the perception of India. That, I would like to take as much credit as I should for diplomacy. But honesty would compel me to say that it's actually the individual experiences of people. They don't have to be in America. They can be in Bengaluru also. Every good experience actually creates a bond. At the end of the day, when you say you want people to think well of India, they are putting a face to it, okay? A country is impersonal. If they see a face, an experience, a relationship, that's how you get an image.
So we'll take one question. Gentleman has been waiting for quite long. Next, after that, Dr. Gururaj Karjagi.
So, Dr. Jaishankar, my name is
One
Ajay,
question.
and
Single question, short question.
I will ask a single question, and with a strong belief and conviction that you will be continuing making us proud in the same way. Now, by the time on the 4th June you will come back, there is an evolving landscape of a fight between Iran and Israel, and that poses a threat of a world divided between two blocks, USA bloc and Rus or China. Now, at the same time, we cannot count zilch nada about our two notorious neighbors. So this time, this is a defense diplomacy. And what I wanted to understand your point of view about securing the national interest on the international forum once again.
Dr. Gururaj Karjagi.
My name is Gururaj Karjagi. I am a teacher. We are living through tumultuous times now. You see Bharat all around us. On left side we have got a pseudo democracy. On the right side we have got Myanmar. We have got problems with Sri Lanka, Ukraine, Russia war, and on side Iran, Israel. All these things are happening now. What would be the moral and ethical stand of Bharat?
We have Rajesh.
Minister, my name is Rajesh. I am from WMG Group. My question is similar to what my other friends have asked me here. We live in a multipolar world. Beyond Quad, what are we talking? You have done a significant progress in Quad, and again, Quad is a reality and IMA is a dream. Are we talking about any other multilateral arrangements? Thank you.
One question from the lady there.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much. I'm Gauri Dikshit, from a PhD scholar in International Relations and Security Studies from Chanakya University. My question to you is, India aspires to be the connect in the world in the coming years. So how do you really see things moving around with terrorism as an external affairs minister of this country in the next 2 to 3 years, and how do you see us address this elephant? Thank you.
One more we have to choose from the last benches probably, because I think we've given enough opportunity here. We have to go to the last benches. Yes, Mr. Guru Prasad.
Sir, thank you very much. It's an honor to speak to you, sir. From the point of view of the narrative of India, the New York Times or the Washington Post seem to be writing the narratives. As a MEA, how do we think, instead of being reactive, can we do something about it? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a connected question, if you don't mind. Please. First, Bharat is blessed to have you as our External Affairs Minister. Right? On a lighter note, I would probably call you as the smiling assassin. Right? My question is around the same point which Guru raised. We have so many unsolicited advice coming in from countries, particularly the US. And if you look at US itself closely, their judicial process is broken, their immigration process is broken, their borders are broken. So why are we not kind of slapping the wrist once in a while and telling them to mind their business in terms of what they should be doing? I know geopolitics is not easy, not as easy as a 56-year youth thinks it is, and he believes that he can do a better job, but leaving that aside, is there a way that we could actually send the message across to these countries?
Sure. Starting with the Iran-Israel issue. Look, yes, right now, last few days have been very difficult, complex. Interestingly, yesterday night before setting out for Bengaluru this morning, I spoke actually to both the foreign minister of Iran and the foreign minister of Israel. So, because, with Iran particularly, we have right now one issue of great concern, which is one ship with 17 Indian crewmen has been taken to Iran, so we're trying to get them released as quickly as possible. But coming back to your question, this is a very complicated world. The Cold War was very simple compared to this, because somebody else used the word multipolar, I think you did. So what is, blocks are getting weaker and weaker. In some cases, they don't exist anymore. There's no Soviet bloc anymore, okay? Even what was the American bloc is today much weaker on many issues. Europe thinks differently. Within Europe, countries think differently. Japan may pull one way, Korea may pull one way. So one part of it is the simple binaries, we have to get past it, okay? The second, if you look at actually distribution of economic strength and power, that has also changed. Many more countries are much more powerful today. So often you have regional countries who will do their own thing. They will not necessarily listen to bigger countries, UN Security Council members, etc. So I don't accept that, when there is a binary, when there is a binary, I will take a side if I feel that my interests allow me, want me to take that side. But I will never be pushed in a binary into taking a side because I'm so weak I cannot withstand that pressure. I think that is not India anymore. So if I can deal, let us say, with a Russia-West binary, surely I have that much diplomacy to deal with an Israel-Iran binary. So we have to navigate it, and life will become complicated. It's more vectors, more axes, more dimensions, all really at the same time. On the issue of neighbors, yes, look, it's very interesting. We look at our neighbors and sometimes focus on issues or problems that we have. Somebody mentioned Maldives. Every country has issues with its neighbors. It comes from the fact that they are neighbors. Show me a country which says, oh, by the way, I have no problems, I have zero problems with all my neighbors. It is impossible. So, we should take it seriously, but we shouldn't get so obsessed with it, because every problem also has a solution. I look at the neighborhood, okay? Today we are saying, okay, there's a problem in Maldives. 15 years ago, they actually threw out an Indian company from that. Then what happened? Okay, we went through it, then we had a good period, now we are having some problems. You look at Sri Lanka, the Sri Lanka was a country with whom there were a lot of positive things, yet they went and got China to build a port in Hambantota. Okay? Then we again went through a certain period. At a moment of crisis, we were the guys who helped. That's had a deep impact on the public opinion. You have a country like Nepal. For years they were suspicious of us. But today they are willing to become major energy providers to India because they see a big revenue source out there. So when it comes to neighbors, I think Prime Minister Modi's thinking from the start has been this. For India, we are the biggest, okay? We should not be reciprocal with our neighbors. We should be generous so long as our red lines are not crossed. we need to invest in our neighbors. If necessary, if we are to build, let us say, grids or roads, or we should be willing to go the extra mile. It doesn't have, you can't do 50-50 with a smaller neighbor. It has to be proportional to their capacity. That is actually the way today. Today, if I actually look at 10 years of hard work, we have grids today with Bangladesh. We had even earlier with Bhutan, with Nepal, which we didn't have. We are thinking of doing a grid across the sea with Sri Lanka. When I look today at our roads, at our railways, at fuel from our refineries which goes through a pipeline, both Bangladesh and Nepal today get their fuel from an Indian refinery. So we are trying today to integrate this neighborhood, and I think the more, our neighbors should also benefit from the rise of India. They mustn't think we are rising, but they're not part of the rise. Because that's like having a neighbor, whose levels of prosperity are very different. So it's something which we are looking at. This question beyond Quad, we are already doing beyond Quad. Look, much before Quad, we started BRICS, okay? BRICS was done as a message to the West, saying, guys, don't think you're going to call all the shots. There are enough of us. We may be all different, but we all have one thing in common, which is you guys keep us out, okay? So that is what united us, and in a sense, that has become a pressure point on the West. So I think what is happening is where, because today the UN is dysfunctional, because the alliance politics is breaking down, we are moving into a new way of diplomacy where a group of countries come together and say, okay, for this issue, we will work together. So IMEC is such an example. We have something called I2U2. You can get small ones, big ones. It need not be on politics. I mean, some of you would be surprised. We identified countries which all have big cats, okay, and created something called a Big Cat Alliance. We have done it in solar. We have done it in disaster resilience. So, in fact, I audited the last 10 years. There are 36 such gatherings which we have initiated or which we have joined in the last 10 years. It's a new way, really, of doing diplomacy, one I think which will get stronger and stronger. On the terrorism question, yes, I think we have a particular leadership role there because very few countries have taken the kind of punishment from terrorism that we have. And, the idea that others will stand up for us and somebody else will find a solution, I think we need to put that behind us. There are probably 2 or 3 facets to it. One is to delegitimize it, to never allow people to say this cause was so important that it justifies the use of terrorism. There is no cause which justifies the use of terrorism. We need to be very, very clear. The moment we start justifying or excusing or condoning terrorism anywhere, it will come back to haunt us. So we need clarity there. Number 2, whenever something is done to us, we should not turn the other cheek. We need to have clarity there too. And one big change today, and I tell people, I mean, it's a very simple thing. Just compare 26/11 with Uri and Balakot. And I can say, at that time when 26/11 happened, I mean, most of you would remember it. I mean, which one of us was not left feeling angry about the lack of response? I think the entire country wanted something to be done. Some cost to be extracted, some pain to be inflicted. And we didn't do it. So what is the lesson that the other party carries away? Today I can tell you that there is a clear realization that, karma will catch up in some form, at some time.
Yes.
So, on the New York Times and Washington Post, I mean, if you want to read it, be my guest. Look, I'm not sure I agree with you that they set the narrative, because even in the US, I don't think they set the narrative anymore in the US. I think they are seen very much, one is seen as Beltway, one is seen as East Coast. I think US itself has graduated out of it. But there are people in India who would like to use New York Times and Washington Post as references to validate what they themselves propagate out here. My own sense is, with the passage of time, this is already changing. Partly social media has changed it, new media has changed it, online platforms have changed it. So I guess, their nuisance value will really come down with the passage of time. And the last issue on the unsolicited advice that we get. Yes, we get unsolicited advice. It is part of, it's a mix of 2 or 3 things. It's a feature of globalization, where everybody feels free to advise everybody on everything. Number 2, it is a function in some cases of old habits, of people who for last 200 years believe that they set the standards and they will determine the value of it. And I would say to some extent it's a problem when people in our own country invite it. So sometimes what looks unsolicited is actually solicited. So the answer there is actually, frankly, to confront it. If somebody says, today I get advice saying, oh, I have concerns about a legal proceeding in your country. So my answer is, okay, so tell me, in your country, does the law stop when the election begins? If it does, I'd like to know. If it doesn't, why do you expect it will happen in mine? So I think part of it is we also now, in many ways need to push back, need to, if they give advice on the advice, I would say.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful deliberation. I'm sure this 90 minutes, all of you would go back with very good memories. No more of time is enough to hear Mr. Jaishankar. We have come to the business end of the session. I request Dr. Narendra Rangappa to propose the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Prashant. You asked me to propose the vote of thanks. It's like playing a last over of a drawn test match. I would like to thank today's Center of Attraction, Honorable Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar ji, who changed the image of a foreign minister from a stiff-lipped upper diplomacy to a surgical strike commander like a foreign minister. Thank you for being with us, sir. I would like to thank Dr. C.N. Ashwath Narayan ji for gracing this occasion. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank Srimati Malvika Avinash ji, Vice President, BJP Karnataka, for being a motivator for this program, which has led to this grand success of this program. Not to forget Sri Ashwath Narayan ji, our spokesman in chief, for gracing this occasion. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank the audience as well, who made it possible in their busy schedule to be present here. Thank you, everybody. I would also like to thank the coordinators of Economic Cell, Mr. Prashant G.S. I would like to thank the coordinator of our media cell, Sri Karnakarji Kasle. I would like to thank the press and media for their presence here, and special thanks to the police for their action to help us conduct the event. Thank you all. Thank you very much.